I went on a camping trip a few months ago. I thought it would help me relax. I drove to a quiet national park. I was excited to take photos of wildlife. I set up my tent by a clear lake. The trees were tall, and the air was fresh. At first, everything felt normal. I thought I would remember how beautiful it all was. The first night I was settling in, I heard rustling nearby. I froze. Then I heard soft whispers. I convinced myself it was the wind or maybe animals. I shook off the feeling of unease. I focused on taking pictures instead. I thought I was just overreacting. As the nights passed, I noticed strange shadows flicker beyond the firelight. I felt them move, but when I looked, nothing was there. My heart raced, but I laughed it off. I told myself I needed to relax. Maybe I was stressed from work. One night I explored the woods to find a good photo spot. That's when I found weird carvings on the trees. They looked fresh. I couldn't make sense of them. I felt a chill run down my back. The deeper I went, the quieter it got. It was like the woods were holding their breath. I returned to my camp, but the feeling of being watched was stronger. I could hear my heart thumping in my chest. I tried to ignore it. I thought it was normal to feel uneasy alone in the woods. But then, I stumbled on an abandoned tent. There were signs someone had been there, a broken flashlight, a half-eaten granola bar, but there was no one around. I looked for footprints but found nothing. Each night felt longer. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was lurking beyond the trees watching me. I thought about leaving, but every time I considered it, I felt stuck. It made no sense. Did no one else notice this strange presence? On the last night, everything felt wrong. I kept hearing more whispers. They were closer, almost taunting me. I looked around, but all I saw was the trees moving in the wind. I wanted to scream, but my voice felt trapped. I could feel the cold wrapping around me. Just then, I heard someone say, "Why are you here?" I turned around, my heart racing. Nobody was there. Panic hit me hard. I froze, my mind racing. I was completely alone. I glanced at the trees, trying to make sense of it all. But I didn't feel safe anymore. I gathered my things but couldn't move. I had to stay, but the woods felt heavy. The whispers grew louder. I squeezed my eyes shut, hoping this was all a nightmare. I wanted to wake up, but I didn't know how. When I opened my eyes, I felt an overwhelming dread. Something was out there and I couldn't leave. The darkness closed in and all I could hear were the whispers getting closer and closer. I was scared. I don't know what happened next. I just stood there feeling watched, waiting for something I couldn't see. The night stretched on, and the whispers seemed to wrap around me like a cold blanket. Something in my gut told me I had to act. I couldn't stay frozen in fear. I needed to break free from this spell that had held me captive. I made a decision. I grabbed my flashlight and crept toward the trail that led back to my car. The beams of light danced on the ground, making shadows twist unnaturally. I felt like I was being drawn to something deeper in the woods, some invisible force pulling me back toward the unknown. I shook my head, fighting the urge to turn around. The whispers changed. They no longer sounded taunting, but desperate. "Help us," they begged, echoing through the trees. Panic surged in my chest. Were these voices real? Were they calling out to me for help? I stumbled, nearly dropping my flashlight as I turned to look behind me. The trees stood tall and silent, their branches swaying like silent spectators. "Get out!" I shouted. "Just leave me alone." Silence fell, heavy and suffocating, but it didn't last long. The rustling began again, louder this time. I aimed my flashlight into the darkness, revealing the faint outline of what looked like a figure between the trees. My breath caught in my throat. That's when I saw it, a shadowy figure almost blending into the bark of the tree. I couldn't make out its features, but it felt wrong. There was something unnatural about it. It stretched and shrank as it moved, like smoke caught in a draft. My instincts kicked in. I turned and ran. I had no idea where I was going, just that I had to get away. The beam of my flashlight darted around madly, illuminating the path ahead. I could hear branches snapping underfoot and the whispers growing louder behind me. Angry now, like I was trying to escape a nightmare I had inadvertently stepped into. As I stumbled deeper into the woods, I saw another figure flash by. disappearing into the trees. I skidded to a halt, breathless. Was it another person, or part of the same shadow? I couldn't tell if I was being led into danger, or if they were trying to guide me out. Confusion and fear twisted inside me. But then I remembered the carvings I found earlier. What if those markings were warnings? I needed to find them. Understanding might give me answers. I turned, still running in the direction I thought I'd come from. The whispers intensified, urging me onward. They felt almost playful now, like a child's laughter echoing just out of reach. I burst through a thicket and found myself back at the edge of the clearing, my heart pounding. But the carvings were gone, the trees stood plain and undisturbed. Panic set in again. They had disappeared. How could that be? I had seen them clearly just days ago. It was impossible. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted something glinting in the firelight ahead. I hesitated for a moment, dread creeping in again. But curiosity pushed me forward. I had to know what new piece of this puzzle awaited me. As I drew closer, I realized it wasn't just something left behind. It looked like a reflection, bouncing off something buried in the dirt. I knelt to dig through the leaves, a sense of urgency taking over. But my heart raced for a different reason now. What would I uncover? My hand brushed against something cold and hard. Whatever it was connected to the strange events surrounding my camping trip. That's when everything went dark. I jolted awake, gasping for air. My heart thundered in my chest. The darkness wrapped around me like a dense fog. My flashlight had flickered out, leaving me in a void. I scrambled to sit up, my palms pressed against damp earth. What happened? Where was I? The memories rushed back. The whispers, the shadows, the chilling feeling of being watched. I strained my ears, listening. The night was silent, but I felt a growing pressure, as if the darkness itself was alive and breathing with me. Then I remembered. I had discovered something. I reached down, my hands shaking as they brushed against cool metal. I pulled the object into the sliver of moonlight. It was a locket, slightly scratched but intricately designed. My fingers traced the patterns absent-mindedly. Was it someone's lost keepsake? The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. I had to know who it belonged to. I flipped it open, expecting to see a photo inside, but instead, it was empty, save for a strange inscription etched into the cold metal. I squinted to read the tiny letters. Find me where the shadows whisper. A chill ran through me. What did that mean? I couldn't shake the feeling that this was significant. It felt like a thread pulling at the edges of my mind, urging me to piece together the puzzle I had stumbled into. I looked around for my flashlight, my pulse quickening. Panic began to rise again, and I felt the urge to flee. But where? I had lost my sense of direction, and I could feel the weight of the shadows all around me, pressing down heavily. Suddenly I heard it again, the whispers. They slithered into my consciousness, now inviting rather than threatening. Come back, follow us. The timbre of the voices felt almost playful, teasing me. I shook my head, fighting against the pull. Could these voices be leading me to safety or further into danger? Then, out of the depths of my uncertainty, I saw it. Just beyond the trees, there was a faint glimmer like a candle flickering in the distance. I struggled to my feet, instinctively drawn to it. Maybe it would lead me back to my car or help me make sense of whatever was happening here. I moved cautiously, heart racing as the whispers echoed in my mind. Find the light, they urged, as if they had read my thoughts. Each step felt heavier than the last. The further I went, the louder the laughter became, here in the dark, where I felt utterly alone. When I finally broke through the last line of trees, I was met with an unexpected sight. A small campsite lay before me, but it wasn't abandoned. Figures shuffled around the fire, their faces obscured in shadow, their movements exaggerated and strange. I instinctively stepped back, my instincts screaming that I should turn and run. Before I could process what was happening, the voices snapped to a hush, and all eyes turned in my direction. A shiver coursed down my spine. That's when I realized. Someone was watching me from the firelight. I stumbled backward, and in that moment, I felt a cold presence wash over me. Who are they? I whispered to myself, gripping the locket tightly, knowing whatever came next would change everything. I blinked at the figures, my heart hammering in my chest. The fire flickered, casting long shadows that danced across the ground. I could barely make out their faces. They looked familiar, yet unsettling, as if I were staring into distorted reflections of myself. "What do you want?" I called out, my voice shaking. The whispers returned, echoing through the campsite, wrapping around the figures like a cloak. "Join us," they murmured in unison, their voices almost musical. One figure stepped closer, revealing a young woman with wild hair illuminated by the firelight. Her eyes glistened with an intensity that made my breath hitch. "You found the locket," she said, a grin spreading across her face. "You're here to help us." "Help you?" I scoffed, trying to mask my fear with bravado. "What do you need help with?" The laughter returned, erratic and unsettling. The others exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of eagerness and anticipation. "We need to remember," another voice chimed in. A man dressed in tattered clothes lounged against a nearby tree, his expression both inviting and menacing. "You have the key." "The key?" I repeated, tightening my grip on the locket. "What do you mean?" "Where the shadows whisper," the woman sang softly. "You hold the answer. You were chosen." The others nodded in agreement, their eyes fixed on me as if I were a puzzle they desperately needed to solve. A wave of unease washed over me. I felt trapped, not just physically but mentally. I had always been drawn to mysteries, but now I wished I had ignored the whispers, stayed home, and left this locket lying in the dirt. "Chosen for what?" I asked, my voice breaking. It felt like something in the air shifted, a tension building that seemed to vibrate between us. "To awaken," the woman said, her grin widening. "To find the truth among the lies. To return what was lost." She extended her hand, palm up, inviting me closer. "Will you help us?" I took a step back, instinctively wanting to escape. "No. I don't know anything about you." "Of course you do," the man interrupted, his voice booming, causing the flames to crackle beneath his intensity. "You've felt them. The memories buried in the dark. You're drawn to it, just like us." Then everything shifted. The fire flickered violently. I instinctively covered my face as the heat grew, suddenly feeling enclosed by a wall of flame. "What's happening?" I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. "Find me." The woman's voice pierced through the chaos, a haunting echo that mingled with the crackling of the fire. The laughter turned sinister, eroding what little courage I had left. I turned to run but stumbled. The shadows rushed toward me, swallowing the light. And then, nothing. The world around me faded into a suffocating darkness. That's when I realized I wasn't just running away. I was diving headfirst into an unknown I couldn't escape. I gasped as I regained my senses. It felt like being yanked from a deep sleep. The air was thick and stale, suffocating. I blinked slowly, trying to piece together where I was. My surroundings were dim, illuminated only by a faint, flickering light that danced somewhere in the distance. My heart raced. I could hear a soft murmur, an unintelligible chorus that wrapped around my mind like a vine. I pushed myself off the ground, my body shaking. Had they dragged me here? I stumbled forward, feeling the roughness of the earth beneath my hands. Each movement sent panic shooting through me. The whispers grew louder, swirling around, almost urging me to follow the sound. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. Responses came in hushed tones that echoed back at me, but they weren't clear. As I continued moving, I caught a glimpse of light through a cluster of trees ahead. I crept toward it, my breath catching with each step. As I broke through the brush, the scene that met my eyes was terrifying. I stood at the edge of a clearing. The fire I had seen before blazed in the center, now surrounded by a circle of stones. But it wasn't the fire that chilled me. It was the figures gathered around it. They were there again, the same unsettling faces. But they weren't alone. In the light, I could make out more figures, shadows that flitted about the clearing, merging into the darkness. Their movements were erratic, unnatural, like insects flitting in a panic. I felt bile rise in my throat. "Welcome back," the woman with wild hair said, her smile chillingly wide. "You've returned." "I didn't want to," I shouted, desperation rising in my chest. "I want to leave." The laughter erupted again, a cacophony that sent fresh waves of terror coursing through me. "You can't leave. Not yet," the man interjected. "You're here for a purpose." "What purpose?" I ground out, anger mingling with fear. Before they could respond, a figure emerged from the shadows, tall and imposing. The energy in the clearing shifted. "What you seek lies deeper," the newcomer said, his voice deep and resonant, drawing all attention. "You must confront the truth mask by mask." "What truth? What are you talking about?" I felt sheer panic surge, my mind racing. "You need to remember," the woman said softly, her expression turning serious. "Before you can escape, you must embrace the darkness inside." I clenched the locket tightly in my hand. "I don't want anything to do with this." But the laughter echoed again, and the tall figure leaned closer. "You have no choice. The shadows will reveal what you have buried. Only then can you break free." Suddenly, a chilling wind swept through the clearing, causing the flames to flicker wildly. I felt a shiver run down my spine. As I looked back at the figures, I noticed something on the ground, a piece of fabric, torn and dirty. It glimmered in the firelight, but I couldn't place where I had seen it before. That's when I realized it. This wasn't just a camping trip gone wrong. The whispers grew louder, and pieces of my memory began to emerge, uninvited and raw. The fire crackled ominously, and I stared at the fabric, fear settling deep in my gut. I knew I had to find out more. But what if the truth was more terrifying than the dark? I took a cautious step toward the fabric, my heart thudding loudly in my chest. The whispering had grown frantic, almost warning me to back away. But I couldn't help myself. I needed answers. I knelt down, reaching my hand toward the torn piece of cloth. As my fingers brushed against it, a blast of memories hit me like a wave. Images darted through my mind. Laughter by a campfire, the rustling of leaves, a girl's gasp of surprise. I froze, recognizing the laughter as my own. But why couldn't I remember where or when it took place? The fabric felt familiar, like it belonged to someone I knew. I needed to understand. "Stop," shouted the tall figure. He stepped forward, his shadow falling over me. "You are not ready." "Not ready for what?" I snapped, frustration bubbling. "What do you know?" With that, the man fell silent, and the woman with wild hair spoke again. "You must confront what you fear most. Only the truth can break these chains." "What chains?" I felt my patience thinning. "You're just talking in riddles." With a sudden movement, she tossed a handful of dirt into the air toward the fire. The flames roared higher, illuminating the clearing. For a moment, I forgot my fear, mesmerized by the dance of light and shadow. But then, figures emerged from the darkness all around. The whispers turned into screams. The shadows twisted into familiar faces, friends, loved ones. Their eyes were hollow, their mouths moving frantically but producing no sound. Panic clawed at my throat as I realized they were bound, trapped in this nightmare just as I was. "Look closer," the tall figure commanded, pointing towards the entrapped faces. "Do you see what you have done?" A chill gripped me. I recognized one of the faces, the girl from my memories who had dragged me into this camping trip in the first place. My gut sank as I recalled our last moments together, the fear in her eyes when we got separated in the woods. I felt the weight of guilt settle upon me. "Please," I begged, but my voice barely broke through the throbbing chaos around me. "I need to know." "Then step into the fire," the woman said, her expression unreadable. "Only then will your guilt rise into clarity." "No," I replied, shaken. I can't do that." "You must choose," the tall figure insisted, his tone unwavering. "The fire holds the truth, but it will also expose you. Are you ready to see?" As the flames flickered, my body trembled. I was trapped in a whirlwind of uncertainty. Facing the fire could either unveil my worst nightmares or save me. With each passing second, my heart pounded louder, and I realized I had a choice. Either leap into the flames or remain in chains with the shadows forever. That's when I heard it, a shriek that cut through the din of the flames and whispers. Someone else was in the clearing, and they were crying for help. My instincts kicked in, but I hesitated, caught between my fear and a deep-seated need to confront the truth. In that moment, my decision crystallized. I had to confront the fire, not just for myself, but for those trapped alongside me. But as I stepped closer, everything went dark. I woke up to a cold gust of wind, my body sprawled on the damp ground. The clearing was silent now, the fire reduced to smoldering embers. My heart raced as I scrambled to my feet, scanning the familiar trees for any signs of life. The faces that had haunted me just moments ago were gone, swallowed by the darkness that hung around me. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaking. I felt utterly lost. The urge to flee surged through me, but I remembered the girl, her fear etched in my mind. Could I truly walk away? "Anyone?" Silence answered, thick and suffocating. I reluctantly turned around, half expecting the tall figure or the wild-haired woman to reappear. Instead, all I found was the still air and the remnants of my shattered resolve. Then another sound pierced the stillness, a desperate cry, faint yet distinct. My heart twisted in recognition. It was her voice, the girl from my memories. I froze for a heartbeat, trying to pinpoint where it came from. "Help!" The call echoed like a ghost, urging me. I stumbled forward, drawn by the sound. It led me deeper into the trees. Each step felt heavy, weighted by my uncertainty. The shadows loomed larger, and I shivered, haunted by the grim secrets hidden beneath their veil. "Where are you?" I shouted, my desperation and fear mingling in the air. The branches clawed at me as I pushed deeper into the darkness. I could feel my breath growing shallow. I wasn't sure how long I could keep this up, not when the shadows felt so alive, so malicious. Then I saw it. A flicker of light ahead, barely illuminating a path. I rushed toward it, but as I moved, the cries faded, replaced by trembling whispers. "She's gone," they hissed. "You let her down." I stumbled, nausea washing over me. "No," I yelled, the desperate denial tearing from my lips. "I didn't. I have to find her." The light shimmered like a beacon, and I pushed forward, but the underbrush tugged at my legs as if trying to hold me back. Just then, a figure appeared at the edge of the light, silhouetted against the glow. It was another girl, her silhouette eerily similar to the one I had lost. But the expression on her face was twisted with rage rather than fear. "What have you done?" she spat, stepping further into the light. Her eyes glimmered, filled with both accusation and sorrow. I didn't mean to," I stammered, my words jumbled in my throat. "I need to find her. The girl—" "She's not the one you should worry about," the girl interrupted, her voice slicing through the air. "You've been following shadows and lies." "What do you mean?" I asked, panic bubbling. "Who are you?" She raised her hand and the light pulsed, revealing memories I had long buried deep within. "Your past is calling, whether you like it or not. You have to face it." But before I could respond, the ground trembled. The light flickered violently, and I suddenly felt the shadows closing in on me. I had to choose. Confront my past or lose everything I held dear. "Wait!" I shouted, but her figure faded as the light dimmed. Darkness enveloped me once again, sinking its claws into my resolve. The whispering returned, louder now, drowning me in a sea of doubt and dread. I stumbled backward, uncertainty flooding through me as the shadows writhed closer. The whispers transformed into a chaotic chorus, taunting me, reminding me of everything I had pushed aside. "Face it," they hissed, their voices growing sharper, more insistent. "You can't escape." I closed my eyes, trying to block them out, but the images returned. Faces and voices that belonged to my past, twisted and contorted with pain. Then a thought struck me. What if the girl was right? What if I had been running not just from the danger in front of me, but from myself? "Stop!" I shouted to the void, my voice cracking. "I'm not afraid!" But even I could hear the lie in my words. The tremors beneath my feet turned into a rumble, and I felt the ground shift. Panic surged anew. I was losing control, and I could feel the shadows creeping up my legs, cold and suffocating. As I fought to break free, something else caught my attention. A glimmer ahead, bright and relentless, unlike the soft light that had beckoned before. Could it be a way out? The thought sparked hope, but it also sent a shiver down my spine. My instincts screamed to turn back, but I couldn't stand still. I pushed through the underbrush, branches snapping under my urgency. Suddenly, I broke through the trees and found myself on a steep hillside overlooking a vast chasm. The sight stole my breath. The darkness below seemed alive, pulsating. It whispered secrets and despair, a lure I couldn't resist. I glanced back, instinctively searching for the girl, but she was gone, and so was the flickering light. I felt utterly abandoned, alone in the void with shadows swirling around me. "Please, just show me," I cried out, the knot in my throat tightening. "Bring her back!" The shadows around me stirred, and from the depth of the chasm came a low, mournful howl. My thoughts raced. Was that the girl? My heart raced at the thought of what awaited me down there. At that moment, I made a decision. I would not run away any longer. I needed to confront whatever lay hidden below, the truth of my choices and the consequences that had followed. As I turned to make my descent, I noticed something catching the faint light, something glimmering ominously in the dirt. With trembling hands, I brushed away the soil and leaves, revealing a small silver locket. My gut twisted as I recognized it. It was hers. But why was it here? Before I could think further, the ground beneath me shifted again and I slipped, tumbling toward the edge of the chasm. "No!" I shrieked, arms flailing as I fought to grab onto anything. The locket slipped from my fingers and disappeared into the depths below, the echo of its fall swallowed by the darkness. And just like that, everything went silent. My heart pounded in the eerie stillness, and I hung perilously close to the edge, staring down into the abyss. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I looked back over my shoulder, and when I did, that familiar silhouette re-emerged from the shadows. "Do you understand now?" she asked, the anger replaced with piercing calm. My breath caught. I had no idea what was coming next, but deep inside, I felt a storm brewing. I couldn't speak. My throat felt tight as if the words were trapped fighting for escape. The girl took a step forward. I felt the shadows shift behind me, wrapping around my ankles like tendrils of ice. "Do you see it now?" she pressed. "What you lost, what you've tried to forget?" I tried to shake my head, but a part of me understood. That locket was a memory, a tether to something I had once cherished. My mind raced, and I fought against the images flooding back. Faces flashed before me, each more vivid than the last. Friends, laughter, moments that felt light years away. And then, the darker memories came. Guilt, regret, shadows of choices I had made. "Enough!" I yelled, panic gripping me once more. "I didn't want this. Running never solves anything." Her voice echoed, softer now, teasing. "You think you can escape the past? Just like—" Suddenly I felt a violent tremor in the ground. The earth convulsed beneath me, and I barely managed to pull myself back from the brink of the chasm. I looked back at her, and her expression shifted from calm to something more intense, more demanding. "Prove it!" she shouted suddenly, her voice reverberating around us. "Face them!" Before I could comprehend what she meant, a wave of darkness surged from the depths of the chasm. Shadowy figures emerged, their shapes indistinguishable, but their intentions clear. They lunged toward me. I stumbled backward, heart racing. "What do you want?" I shouted, voice echoing as I darted to the side, barely dodging their grasping hands. The girl remained behind me, a bystander in a confrontation I never asked for but had somehow invited. "They want the truth," she stated, her gaze locked on the figures. "You have a choice." My back hit a tree, and I felt the bark pressing into my skin. I was trapped between the shadowy figures and her steady stare. "What truth? I don't understand." The figures stopped, looming within the light's reach. They shifted and swayed like smoke, and I could almost make out faces, merging and separating, distorting into familiar outlines. One of them stepped forward. It was a face I hadn't seen in years, a friend once so dear, now a painful reminder of my mistakes. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the words barely leaving my lips. "Sorry doesn't change anything," the figure shouted, voice thick with anguish. The girl stepped forward, now almost a reflection of my own determination. "Will you stand and fight, or will you let them consume you?" The shadows bore down on me, their whispers dark and heavy. A whirlwind of emotions pummeled my thoughts as I realized she was right. I couldn't hide anymore. I had to face what I had done. With a deep breath, I stepped toward the haunting figures, fear turning into resolve. "I'm ready," I said, my voice stronger than I felt, and that's when the ground erupted beneath me. Everything went dark. I jolted awake again, my heart racing, breath heavy in my chest. I found myself in a clearing once more, the strange figures absent, but the lingering dread palpable in the air like a storm threatening to break. The soft glow of dawn was just beginning to filter through the trees, casting sharp shadows that danced around me. I felt both disoriented and strangely lighter, but there was a gnawing void where clarity should have been. I scrambled to my feet, brushing off the damp earth clinging to my clothes and instinctively looking around for any sign of those unsettling figures. The absence of their presence filled me with a sense of unease, but I knew. Whatever had happened, the confrontation that loomed in the darkness remained unfulfilled. I had the sinking realization that I might not have escaped as thoroughly as I hoped. "Is anyone here?" I called out, my voice trembling against the surrounding trees. The only response was an echo of my words, swallowed by the fading night. A part of me wondered if I had truly walked away from it all, or if I was still intertwined in some ghostly riddle meant to pull me back. The locket was still clutched tightly in my palm, its cool surface grounding me. I opened it again, half expecting the chilling memories to flood back. Perhaps a glimpse of her, the girl who had unwittingly brought me here. But the emptiness stared back, mocking my need to understand what I had lost and what I had to confront. I stood still, torn between a choice: follow the path back toward where my car lay parked, or delve deeper into the woods that had both terrified and beckoned me. I could almost hear the whispers growing louder in my ears, a cacophony of voices urging me to step forward. "Find us," they seemed to plead. "Finish it." A tremor of fear coursed through me, but alongside it was a spark of determination. I understood. I had to bring closure, not just for myself, but for those shadows that loomed large in my mind. So I moved toward the murmur, letting it wash over me like an echo of the past, urging me forward into the depths of my own darkness. The trees thickened as I ventured deeper, each step feeling both familiar and foreign. I began to notice the feel of the woods change. An eerie stillness settled like a shroud, the promise of revelation inching closer. I forced myself to acknowledge the fear lacing through me, holding it tightly because it was the only tether I had to keep pushing through. There, through the heavy branches, I saw the remnants of a flickering flame, the ghost of a fire stuck in my memory. I stepped through, finding what I had feared I might: an empty campsite, the blankets crumpled, the echoes of laughter long extinguished. Suddenly I felt it, an icy breeze that swept through the clearing, rustling the leaves and bringing with it the whispers. "Help us," they called, now intertwined with familiar voices that echoed deep within me. I knew these voices. They belonged to friends like me, to moments when laughter filled the air. But the warmth had turned to something sinister, a painful reminder of regrets. "I'm sorry," I whispered into the void. Regret flooded my throat as the shadows threatened to envelop me once more. I looked around for respite but found only the absence of answers. The same nagging questions echoed in the corners of my mind. Had I truly escaped? Then there it was again, another shimmer drawing me like a moth to a flame. I darted toward it, hungry for understanding, but when I arrived, my heart sank. The remaining embers of the fire settled around an old, broken locket. I crouched down, trembling as the memories flashed between the cracks of my guarded heart. It was hers. In that moment, the realization crashed over me like waves on a shore. They too must have faced the darkness just as I had, lost in the shadows of our choices. I understood now. My journey hadn't just been to uncover my truth, but to acknowledge the ties we shared. I had been running away not only from my fears but from their pain as well. As I gripped my locket tighter, the whispers grew louder, pulling me into a vortex of understanding. A understanding filled with uncertainty, but a sense of closure. Some of them had found their peace, but I had to set the past free, and in doing so, reclaim myself. With a last glance at the campsite, I pocketed the locket, symbolic of outgrowing my past rather than escaping from it. Once again the woods stirred, almost beckoning, but this time it felt different. Cloaked in an air of confidence, I stepped forward into the unknown, the shadows dissipating behind me, leaving only the morning light ahead. As I stepped through the trees and back down the path, I couldn't help but wonder if those shadows would always linger, or if they would finally find rest. But as I reached the edge of the woods, I realized something crucial. I would never know. Life would always hold its questions, and some answers were never meant to be found, but at least I could choose to embrace the light. I had escaped, but the woods would remain, both a keeper of secrets and a willing participant in the tales of all those who entered. I moved to a different city after that. Sometimes I wonder if the forest still whispers, if its shadows linger. But mostly, I try not to think about it. After all, I had learned something remarkable, that sometimes we must face the darkness, not to conquer it, but to understand that it's a part of our journey.